It was a moment no one thought possible. After centuries under the crescent, the cross returned to Jerusalem, not in the form of knights in armor, but in khaki uniforms and polished boots. In December 1917, as snow dusted the hills of Palestine, British General Edmund Allenby dismounted his horse and walked humbly through the Jaffa Gate. The symbolic heart of the Muslim world, Al-Quds, the city of Al-Aqsa, had fallen. By the early 20th century, the once mighty Ottoman Empire had become the sick man of Europe. Decades of costly wars, from the Crimean War to the Balkan conflicts, had drained its power. During World War I, the Ottomans sided with Germany and Italy, facing battles on multiple fronts. The British in Gallipoli and Mesopotamia, the Russians in the Caucasus, and uprisings at home. Focused on defending European borders and modernizing Anatolia, the empire largely neglected its Arab provinces, Syria, Iraq, Arabia, and Palestine. Though rich in culture and history, these Arab regions saw little investment or political inclusion. For 400 years, 1517 to 1917, Arabs lived under Turkish rule, with governors, soldiers, and officials dispatched from Istanbul. Arabic customs and language were sidelined, especially after the Young Turk takeover in 1908, which imposed Turkish as the language of administration and education. Efforts to centralize the empire only deepened Arab resentment, with many feeling like second-class citizens. As one could say, our tongue was ignored, our sons sent to die in foreign wars. To many Arabs, the Ottoman state felt more like a distant occupier than a shared empire. By the early 20th century, Arab frustration began transforming into early nationalism. Inspired by the independence of Balkan nations, Arab thinkers began asking, why not us? In 1913, the First Arab Congress in Paris brought together voices from across the Arab world. They didn't demand independence, but sought local autonomy, recognition of Arabic as an official language, and for Arab soldiers to serve locally rather than in distant Ottoman wars. The Ottoman government largely ignored these modest demands. When World War I began, the Sultan declared a jihad against the Allied powers to rally Muslim support. But key Arab leaders, like Sharif Hussein of Mecca, were hesitant. Distrust between Arab leaders and Ottoman authorities deepened. In Syria and Lebanon, Ottoman governor Jamal Pasha earned the name Al-Safar, the Butcher, for executing dozens of Arab intellectuals and nationalists in 1915 to 16. These acts of repression hardened Arab views of the Ottomans as oppressors rather than Islamic protectors. Though many Arabs, especially older generations, remained loyal to the Sultan Caliph, others began seeing Ottoman rule as foreign domination. Even as some still fought in the Ottoman army out of faith or loyalty, the dream of Arab independence took root. Sharif Hussein quietly envisioned a future free of Turkish control. As one Arab later put it, "We had been under the Turks longer than under any empire, even longer than under ourselves. It was time for a change." With Arab grievances ignored and the Ottomans consumed by foreign wars, the seeds of a historic uprising were sown. As the Ottoman Empire weakened, Britain and France saw opportunity in its Arab territories. Britain eyed secure routes to India and oil in Mesopotamia. France sought control over Syria and Lebanon. World War I gave them their chance. When the Ottomans joined Germany, the British and French secretly planned to divide Ottoman lands. In May 1916, they signed the Sykes-Picot Agreement, a secret deal to carve up the Arab Middle East. France would control the Syrian coast, Lebanon, and northern Iraq. Britain would take southern Mesopotamia and Palestine's key ports. Jerusalem and holy sites were to fall under international control. It was a colonial blueprint, without Arab consent. At the same time, Britain was courting Arab support. In the 1915-16 Hussein-McMahon correspondence, Sharif Hussein of Mecca was promised support for an independent Arab kingdom if he led a revolt against the Ottomans. Though British promises were vague and excluded some regions, Hussein believed he had a green light to lead the Arabs to freedom. In June 1916, he launched the Great Arab Revolt, raising the banner of Arab independence. Tribesmen and nationalist officers from Syria and Iraq joined the fight under a flag that would later symbolize Arab nationalism. They were aided by T.E. Lawrence of Arabia, a British officer who helped coordinate guerrilla attacks on Ottoman railways and garrisons. The revolt weakened Ottoman forces and boosted the British campaign, but unknown to the Arabs, Britain and France never intended to grant them true independence. By late 1917, betrayal became clear. Britain issued the Balfour Declaration, supporting a national home for the Jewish people in Palestine, while still promising Arabs the same land. With one hand, Britain offered Arab freedom. With the other, it endorsed Zionist aspirations. These double dealings, Sykes-Picot and Balfour, exploited Ottoman collapse but planted the seeds of future conflict in the Arab world. While revolts and intrigue brewed in the desert, conventional warfare raged along the Suez and Sinai. By 1917, British Empire forces, including British, Australian, New Zealander, Indian and other troops, were poised in Egypt, eyeing Ottoman Palestine. World War I raged on multiple fronts, and the Middle East was initially a sideshow to the colossal battles in Europe. But by 1916 to 1917, the British High Command saw an opportunity in the Levant. Prime Minister David Lloyd George, a devout man with a biblical upbringing, ardently desired a victory in Palestine. He privately mused about presenting Jerusalem to the British people as a prize. After some hard-fought battles to secure Sinai, the British under General Sir Archibald Murray made 2 attempts to storm Ottoman Gaza in early 1917. But the first and second battles of Gaza ended in frustrating British defeats. The Ottoman defenders, aided by German officers, held their lines. London then sent a new commander, General Edmund Allenby, a gruff but brilliant cavalry general fresh from the European Western Front. Allenby was given a clear order by Prime Minister David Lloyd George: take Jerusalem by Christmas. In autumn 1917, the British Imperial Forces, which included not only British soldiers but large contingents of Indians, Australians, New Zealanders, Anzacs, and other colonial troops, launched a flanking manoeuvre Beersheba to break the Ottoman line. On October 31, 1917, the Battle of Beersheba saw Commonwealth light horse regiments charge and capture the desert town and its vital wells, outflanking the Ottoman Gaza line. With their flank turned, the Ottomans retreated from Gaza, which fell to Allenby in early November. The path north lay open. Allenby's forces pressed on into the coastal plain and the Judean foothills, winning a victory at Mughar Ridge and taking the port of Jaffa by mid-November. The Ottoman Seventh Army, commanded by General Fevzi Pasha under overall German General von Falkenhayn, pulled back into the rugged hills around Jerusalem to make a last stand. They were loath to lose this prized city, for Jerusalem held immense symbolic importance to Ottoman morale as a holy city of Islam, and they knew its fall would hearten the Allies. Throughout November 1917, fierce fighting raged in the Judean hills north and west of Jerusalem. The British 20th Corps and 21st Corps, aided by the Desert Mounted Corps cavalry, struggled through winter rains and tough Ottoman rearguards. A key position was Nebi Samuel, a hill north of Jerusalem believed to be the tomb of Prophet Samuel, which Allenby's men captured after bitter combat by late November. From there, they could overlook Jerusalem. By early December, the noose was tightening around the city. The weather turned cold and wet. Chilling rain fell on troops and civilians alike. On December 8, 1917, with his defences breached and aware that further resistance could mean the bombardment of Jerusalem's holy sites, the Ottoman commander in the city decided to withdraw to avoid a bloodbath. That night, Ottoman soldiers slipped away from their trenches and began evacuating via the road to Nablus. For the first time in 4 centuries, the flag of the Ottoman crescent was coming down over Jerusalem, silently, under cover of darkness and rain. On the morning of December 9th, 1917, the people of Jerusalem awoke to an eerie quiet. Turkish soldiers had slipped away in the night. Soon, 2 humble British sergeants scouting ahead were astonished to encounter a delegation of Jerusalem's civic leaders, led by the mayor himself carrying a white flag, nervously offering the keys to the city in surrender. Legend has it, the first British soldiers they met didn't quite know what to do, and even politely declined the surrender until a proper officer could be found. 2 days later, General Allenby arrived to take formal possession of the ancient city. The Ottoman governor, Izzat Pasha, had left behind a letter of surrender addressed to the British, entrusting the city's fate to the Almighty and the incoming forces. The letter, carried by the mayor of Jerusalem, Hussein al-Husseini, stated, "Due to the severity of the siege, and for fear that these deadly bombs will hit the holy places, we are forced to hand over to you the city, hoping that you will protect Jerusalem the way we have protected it for more than 500 years. It was a poignant message. The Ottomans, claiming to be guardians of Jerusalem since 1517, now yielded that sacred responsibility and begged the British to show the same care. 2 days later, on December 11th, 1917, General Edmund Allenby made his formal entry into Jerusalem, an event etched in the annals of the city's history. Allenby was determined that this moment be handled with utmost respect and sensitivity. To avoid any appearance of triumphalism over a holy city, Allenby dismounted from his horse at the Jaffa Gate and entered on foot, an act of humility recalling the tradition that only the Messiah should ride in Jerusalem's gates. This gesture was widely noted and praised. Dressed in service uniform, accompanied by officers from Britain, France and Italy, allied nations who had a stake in the Holy Land, as well as representatives of his Muslim and Jewish troops, Allenby walked through the venerable gate into the Old City. He thereby became the first Christian general to control Jerusalem in centuries, arguably since King Frederick II took the city peacefully in 1229, or, in the popular imagination, since the Crusader kings of the Middle Ages. Awaiting Allenby inside the citadel, the Tower of David, were Jerusalem's religious leaders and notables whom he wished to address. Standing on a step near the Tower of David, Allenby read aloud a proclamation to the assembled crowd and a detachment of his troops. In it, he assured the inhabitants that the British came as liberators, not conquerors. He declared that every sacred building and holy site would be preserved and protected, that the rights and traditions of all religions would be respected, and that no harm would come to Jerusalem's people. This pledge closely mirrored what the Ottoman governor's surrender letter had requested, a continuity of stewardship. The proclamation was later published in multiple languages: English, French, Arabic, Hebrew, Russian, Greek, and posted on the walls, signaling the dawn of a new era. Many residents, weary from wartime shortages, cautiously welcomed these words, hoping life would improve under British administration. His respectful conduct contrasted with past conquerors and aimed to avoid the image of a new crusade. Yet in Britain, the symbolism was clear. The fall of Jerusalem thrilled the public. It was the first time since the Crusades the city was under Christian control. Prime Minister Lloyd George called it a Christmas present for Britain. Though Allenby avoided religious fanfare, newspapers hailed it as the final chapter of the Crusades. Punch magazine even depicted Richard the Lionheart's ghost, blessing the moment, "My dream comes true." Whether Allenby truly declared the wars of the Crusades are now complete is debated, but the sentiment echoed widely. In the Western imagination, 700 years after Saladin, the cross had returned to the Holy City. After Jerusalem fell, Western reactions mixed piety with propaganda. British officials, once cautious, embraced the New Crusade narrative. The Department of Information produced a film titled The New Crusades, while books like Allenby's Crusaders and The Romance of the Last Crusade glorified the conquest as a Christian triumph. One British officer even boasted that his fellow commanders descended from crusaders, framing the moment as historical vengeance fulfilled. While public rhetoric was moderated to avoid offending Muslim allies, especially Indian troops, private sentiment and propaganda told another story. Nowhere was this more apparent than in Syria. When French forces occupied Damascus in 1920, General Henri Gouraud reportedly kicked Saladin's tomb, saying, "Awake, Saladin, we have returned. The Crusades are over." Another version added, "The cross has triumphed over the crescent." True or not, the tale spread quickly, confirming Arab fears. Western powers saw their victory as religious conquest, not liberation. To many in Britain and France, Jerusalem's capture avenged past Crusader defeats. General Gouraud himself viewed Damascus as the final prize of a medieval dream. For the Muslim world, however, the symbolism was painful. Saladin had once expelled the Crusaders. Now Europeans had returned, waving flags of empire instead of crosses. This triumphalism sparked deep resentment. To Arabs and Muslims, 1917 marked not victory, but a bitter reversal of Saladin's liberation in 1187. Mosques echoed with sorrowful prayers, while the distant Ottoman caliph could do nothing. Some scholars looked to the Quran for meaning, seeing the loss as a divine test. Others recalled hadiths about Jerusalem's repeated capture. On the streets, the mood was one of grief and betrayal. Arabs had revolted with British encouragement, only to see the holy city fall into foreign hands. To many, the Crusaders had returned, modernized, uniformed, but driven by the same imperial ambition. The Ottoman Empire's defeat in World War I led to its formal collapse in 1918. What had been secretly planned in the Sykes-Picot Agreement became official at the 1920 San Remo Conference, where Britain and France carved up the Arab lands as mandates under the League of Nations, colonialism in disguise. Britain took Palestine, Transjordan and Iraq. France took Syria and Lebanon. The Arab government set up by Sharif Hussein's son Faisal in Damascus was crushed by the French, who occupied Syria. Britain compensated the Hashemites by installing Faisal as king of Iraq and his brother Abdullah as emir of Transjordan, both under British control. In Jerusalem, military rule shifted to the British Mandate in 1920, but even before Allenby's arrival in 1917, Britain had issued the Balfour Declaration, pledging support for a Jewish homeland in Palestine. Under the Mandate, Britain began implementing this policy. Zionism, now backed by imperial power, entered Palestine through British gates. British motives weren't purely philanthropic. Some officials supported Zionism out of strategic interest or Christian millenarian views. Others saw it as a solution to Europe's Jewish problem. A Jewish presence near the Suez Canal, they believed, would serve imperial goals and biblical visions. For Palestinian Arabs, this was a betrayal. Many had expected independence in return for their support during the war. Instead, they got foreign rule and waves of European Jewish immigrants under British protection. British policy, they realized, was advancing Zionist goals that would eventually make them a minority in their homeland. As one scholar put it, Palestine entered a colonial tunnel on December 11, 1917. A tunnel that, 3 decades later, would end with mass displacement and the creation of a new state. After World War I, the British Mandate in Palestine, 1920 to 1948, tried to balance two conflicting promises: supporting a Jewish homeland, per the Balfour Declaration, and protecting Arab rights. Jewish immigration surged in the 1920s and 1930s, especially with the rise of Nazism. Alarmed by land sales and demographic shifts, Palestinian Arabs responded with protests, riots, and a full-scale revolt from 1936 to 1939. Britain struggled to manage the unrest, at times limiting Jewish immigration, other times cracking down on Arab resistance. After World War II and the Holocaust, global sympathy for Jews grew. Britain, weakened and weary, handed the Palestine issue to the UN. In 1947, the UN proposed a partition, separate Jewish and Arab states, with Jerusalem under international control. Jewish leaders accepted the plan, Arab leaders rejected it, calling it unjust and undemocratic. On May 14, 1948, the Jewish community declared the independent state of Israel. War broke out immediately, with neighboring Arab states and Palestinian fighters. Israel emerged victorious, taking 78% of historic Palestine, far beyond the UN plan. Over 750,000 Palestinians were expelled or fled during the conflict, an event Palestinians call al-Nakba, the catastrophe. Jerusalem was divided. Israel held the west, Jordan the east, including the Old City. The Ottoman loss of Jerusalem in 1917 had triggered a chain reaction. 3 decades later, a Jewish state had risen in the Arab heartland, while Palestine's indigenous Arabs became refugees. As one Arab nationalist wrote bitterly in the 1920s, "We helped the British against the Turks, and in return they gave our country away." For many in the Arab world, Israel's creation was not liberation, but loss, a Western-imposed tragedy rooted in betrayal. The British Mandate ended in war and dispossession, replacing the old Ottoman pluralism with a modern struggle over land, identity, and survival, a conflict that continues to shake the region to this day. And so, the crescent gave way to the cross, not by sword but by imperial signature. From Suleiman's sealed gate to Allenby's solemn steps, Jerusalem had once again changed hands. What began as Ottoman guardianship ended in European conquest, and a sacred city long protected by Muslim rule now stood exposed to the ambitions of empires. The British, with polished boots and printed proclamations, promised peace. But beneath those promises lay fractures that would shape the century to come. The fall of Jerusalem in 1917 was not the end of a chapter. It was the beginning of a storm. Within just 3 decades, the Holy City would see more war, more division, and a loss even deeper than before. East Jerusalem would fall again. The call to prayer would echo across barbed wire, and Al-Quds would become a symbol of longing, resistance, and contested dreams. In the final episode of the Jerusalem series, we'll trace the next seismic turning point: the Arab-Israeli wars, the Nakba, the loss of East Jerusalem, and the uncertain future of the Holy City. How did the British Mandate end in catastrophe? How did East Jerusalem slip away? And what does prophecy and politics say about what lies ahead for the City of Peace? Don't miss the final chapter of this journey. Subscribe to Darvesh Chronicles and hit the bell icon to stay notified. If you like this video, please like and share it. Until next time, may peace and blessings be with you.